The first thing before we get into the chat with Marc is one thing that I would like to talk about specifically actually is Signal. So you may have noticed 2-3 months ago Signal appeared on our banner, and the thing that made me so happy about that was we had an idea, we're building a community, we're bringing founders together, we're getting a bit of traction, we're having fun, we're generating great conversations. But at that point when we were talking to Signal, we were explaining what we're doing, and actually Signal came through and said, this sounds great, like how can we help? And there was at the time no necessarily clear path to a return on investment. We're a super early stage community, but the thing that just really hit me with that was the message that I was getting from everyone at Signal. No, this is what we're about. We're about innovating, we're about supporting innovators. How can we help? And I was really taken aback by it. I wasn't expecting to find a founding sponsor 5 or 6 months into building a community, and we did it. And there's a number of people from Signal here today, so I kind of wanted to say thank you to you. You know who you are, people from Signal. And if you get the chance, please do check them out. Obviously, Marc's going to share a bit more information about his journey as an entrepreneur in residence with Signal. But afterwards, we're going to stick around, we're going to have a couple of drinks. So if you get the opportunity to talk to someone from Signal, first of all, say thank you. It's hard building community, and I really appreciate the support. But also, learn more from them. We're really lucky to have them with us. They are out there building every day in very large and established industries. So they've got some really excellent knowledge to share with us. And that brings us to why we're here. So super quickly, what we're aiming to do today is have a broad conversation. We're going to be talking with Marc, who, as mentioned, is an entrepreneur in residence at Signal. We're going to talk about what shaped him, how he spotted an opportunity within the maritime space, why the entrepreneur in residence model is working in terms of what he's seen with this opportunity. And then we're going to talk a bit about what it really means to innovate inside a traditional industry. So we've been really lucky over the last 9 months. We've had founders from all different backgrounds. We've had founders that have physical products. We've had founders that are building apps. We've had founders that are starting in all different industries. And this is the first time actually that we're going to be talking to someone that is building in a very big and established industry. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what that journey's like, because I think a number of us will work in big industries and you may see opportunities, but you may be thinking to yourself, well, how do I explore that? What do I do? So that's what I'm looking forward to drilling into. And we're going to talk briefly about what he's building, but we're going to lean into what he's learned and perhaps talking about the future, where that industry's going, where Marc's opportunity's going, and then we're going to finish with a bit of advice for the room. Which sounds easy, doesn't it?
It is.
For those of you that have been before, you may not be surprised. I have too many questions. It's what happens. I get carried away when I'm coming up with these ideas. But in terms of that, we're going to keep the conversation going. We're aiming to talk for hour and 15. We'll read the room. I'm hoping maybe there's a bit of interaction at the end. If there isn't, it's cool. But if anyone has specific questions, I think that would be quite cool, wouldn't it? So in terms of that, I'm going to jump into it. So, the golden question, Marc. Welcome, first of all. Can we have a round of applause for Marc? Come on. First of all, Marc, it's a very open-ended question, but if you could just give a little bit of a brief introduction to the people in the room, and a little bit perhaps how your journey into engineering began.
Right, that's an early start in time.
We're going from the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it all started with high school. I really liked math and physics as subjects, which try to physics at least, explain natural phenomena. And then I sort of thought that engineering was what would take these combined math and the observations made from physics, these models, to apply them to something that society cares about. Engineering is what solves the societal problems. And I thought that was something worth studying, and that led me essentially to embark on that journey at ETH Zurich, where I started to study electrical engineering.
Amazing, amazing stuff. And I think in terms of that, the thing that you took from that is obviously straight away you were applying what you were thinking about to the real world.
Right.
And I think once you'd finished that journey in Zurich, that's pretty much what you did straight away, wasn't it? I started applying these things to the real world. Where did you go from Zurich?
From Zurich, I went to Singapore. So during my master's, I got in touch with self-driving cars. I was a bit on the fence at the time, venturing into the world of quantitative finance in Zurich, because I thought the math behind that was quite interesting, the challenge is intriguing, fairly complex. But then there was also self-driving cars industry coming out, and I thought that it was maybe more interesting to me because it was again addressing one of those societal challenges. Urban transportation is really fundamental and important to society, and there was this new opportunity to work in this new team, new company, and address questions about what do you do with self-driving cars once they're ready? How can they improve transportation in cities? And that was, even though my background was a lot on sort of the algorithms, so to speak, that came to develop what makes a car drive autonomously. But the question that really got to me is, when you have multiple of these roaming the cars, what do you actually do with them? How do you route them so that you provide a good transportation service in a city?
Amazing. And what sort of year was that we're talking about there?
I think that was 2016, so a few years back
So
already.
Yeah, and then quite early, perhaps, into that space.
Exactly. Was just fresh off my degree and got offered essentially back then to do a PhD already.
Nice.
And then decided nonetheless to go for the industry experience, with maybe the idea of going into industry for 2 years and coming back. But for those that know me, this didn't happen. Essentially, the journey I went on was quite interesting. Many things happened, many learnings. We'll probably get to that, so I don't want to get ahead here. Yeah. That was a really great opportunity that I'm super grateful for to have had.
Amazing. I could tell straight away he's going to be a pro. He's teasing you with where we're going with the conversation. I love it. Amazing. So in terms of that, as mentioned, you're super early into, I guess, a deep tech, startup. What was that kind of period like in Autonomy? How many years were you with them? How did the company grow? What was that journey at that point?
I was with them for 5 years, and as mentioned, I jumped straight from Zurich to Singapore, and I just want to mention this as a small fun fact. It's a country that I have never set foot to before. So essentially, I boarded the plane to a country where I knew nobody, nothing about the country yet, to meet people I have never met before on the team, actually, with some exceptions. And then showed up in the office first morning a bit late because I almost overslept my alarm because of the jet lag. But then what was it like? It was a really great experience. We had at first really this dynamic team. The company was, I think, around 40, 50-ish people when I joined. And 1,200, 400 when I left. So, and all of that within 5 years. We've gone through an acquisition, sort of the integration of small company into big one, spinning off a joint venture later to what is today known as Motional and still existing.
Oh, wow.
And I'll let you.
Mate, that's super cool. Mate, you need to just fire in. If you've got something on your mind, you just throw it out there. I'll deal with it afterwards. But mate, in terms of that then, I mean, first of all, what an opportunity. You're super early into an industry. You've just boarded a plane to go to a country you've never been before. And this company has gone from 50 people to 1,200.
Right.
Feels a bit like that is, that sort of startup explosive experience that perhaps a lot of people dream of.
Right.
Were there any key takeaways for you in that time, going from 50 to 1,200?
Right, absolutely.
What did that look like?
I think during that company, I was obviously not, so to say, in the driver's seat. I was an observer, someone in part of the team, but not necessarily on the high-level decision-making of the company. But I think I clearly learned a few lessons about what happened when we got acquired, sort of the kind of skill sets that you might need in these earlier-ish stages.
Yep.
And then also what happens as you get acquired, you try to merge with an existing big company, the people that you need for that, and as you scale, you need different skill sets at different types of stages.
Yep.
And first you have this community of people that all believe in the same mission, that are very tightly knit together in terms of like friends, relationships, that work hard towards a common goal. It matters, you have an emotional connection to what you're doing. And then after the acquisition happens, there are more people, the company gets bigger, teams will change, names will change, etc. And then there will be a bit more, I mean, I'm going towards the other extreme now, but there is a bit more of political structures that come in. Then depending on how things go for some people, there's a bit more of the political, I don't want to say games, but I think people call it that way, that start going on. And I don't want to say this in a negative way with respect to my experience, but just as something that I think I observed, and I understand why that happens and why maybe it has to happen. As you grow, first you have these people, bunch of people that believe in the same thing, as I said, but at one point you need structures to manage them, to align efforts. And I think that is really difficult in general as you grow, to make sure everyone on the team is aligned, pulls in the same direction. And so I understand that as you grow, you need this, and there's some side effects to it.
I think there's, what you're speaking to there is like a super common challenge, I think, isn't it? You do sometimes see it, and you get, I guess, a bit of churn in the company from the, people that enjoy that super early stage, and they perhaps don't change it going forward.
Right, and I think we experienced that too.
Yeah, amazing. I think the thing I'm keen to do is talk about a bit of the pivot. So I think we've set the scene a little bit there. Academic background, you want to solve problems in the real world. You're early on self-driving cars. You've had this, explosive growth experience and stuff like that. At what point did you start to, I guess, think about that pivot to maritime? And I guess also, like, there probably is, for everyone that starts a business that found something, a point where you think, okay, I've got an idea, or I've got an inkling to do this myself. What was that like for you? What was the pivot, and what was the point where you went, okay, I want to build something?
This has been a bit of a process, to be honest. I don't think it was like one moment I woke up in the morning and I said, hey, I'm going to do this. But I think as the company in Singapore was growing, there was a bit of churn. There was COVID. We all went through that, the pandemic. And so then I started to think again about what the choices are. I felt that the growth had sort of slowed down, and as such maybe also some part of the learning experiences. And then the question was just, what next? As in, get out of the comfort zone again, start building something new in the sense of learning something. And that's when I started thinking about the PhD opportunity again. And so 5 years, so now I'm 3 years late to starting that PhD. But then I went back to university, quit the job, became a student again, sat in the bench and looked to my neighbor that was so much younger than me. And I thought, well done, Mark. Is this now a progression or is it a regression? And I think in the end, working with young people in the studies, etc., is a really exciting experience, a very refreshing one. And so for me, the process, to come back to your question, was really about learning about new things, and that is where we met with Signal as a data partner, as someone that helped us shape questions, bring in deep expertise of the market, and I sort of framed my PhD thesis ideas to more broad problems of transportation systems.
Amazing.
And so we started talking to Signal over time, and then it was again a process, I think, until we then decided to go down the entrepreneur in residence route.
Amazing. I think the thing that's clear, and I suspect I might know the answer to this question before I even ask it, but I'll ask it anyway. The thing I've just taken from everything that you've just said is the inquisitive nature that you have and the hunger to learn. I assume that's something that you still have now, that you're building like within Signal. Do you think that's an intrinsic quality that founders need or should have, or do you just think it's something that you have and it helps you in your environment?
I don't want to say I'm special in any sort in that regard or different from anyone else, but I think that if you try to build a company, I think at one point you need to have paying customers and produce value. So this inquisitive nature might help you understand what are the problems there that might be worth tackling. How can you help people? How can you help companies do something? And that's maybe where you want to start with sort of a problem, and then find out the solution in a way.
Yeah. Mate, it sounds super pragmatic as well. Like you're not just learning and trying to solve things for the sake of it.
Right.
You are linking it back to the commercial value and purpose in the world.
That's a good point, because I think when I started the PhD, I think there is the aspect of really having that academic freedom, exploring ideas, algorithms with not necessarily commercial value. And I don't want to focus too much on the commercial value, but I think what I wanted to have is a real world connection. So real world problems being addressed with sort of new technology. What are the means to solve some of the big problems that currently are still very hard to solve?
Yeah. Amazing. I think that takes me to maritime. I suspect there may be others in the room that didn't quite appreciate the maritime industry and what it means to the world and the scale of the industry. So before we do anything else, it probably is worthwhile just perhaps setting the scene a little bit about the maritime industry, and then perhaps building into, what was it that convinced you there was perhaps problems or opportunities to improve it. So yeah, if you could give us a broad stroke on the maritime industry, and we'll go from there.
Right. Okay. I think one of the things I like to say, because it also blew me away at that time, I didn't know that sort of ships carry about 80% of the global trade. And that is huge. If you think of that, it also means that the whole maritime transportation system is to some extent the backbone of the global economy. It's but if things break down, sort of supplies don't get around, manufacturing lines don't have the goods that they need to produce. Same with food and medicine, it doesn't get delivered to people in need. So it just really is a crucial component to society, and I think in history also has been. So cities that were close to ports, etc., they engaged in trade and flourished in a way. And so just from the scale of that, I really wasn't aware, because maritime is something that you don't see in your everyday. Self-driving cars, you go out, it's in the news, it's big, it's huge, it's super important. I don't want to say that, but it's like the maritime system is something very big, very critical, running in the background. And you only hear about it when things go south. Think of the Suez blockage, for instance, by Evergreen, or Ever Given, I think was the vessel name a while ago. So yeah, I think that
I'd never heard of them, but like everybody else, I soon learned
but
about
then you
them.
learned about it now.
Yeah. So, and I guess in terms of that, you may or may not know this, but is there like it's maybe a silly question to be talking about, but like in terms of commercial value, like a dollar value, people talk about industries in terms of the value of the industry. Is there a figure that kind of comes to mind?
No, I think that I have to disappoint you.
80%
is
enough.
Exactly. You multiply whatever,
we'll
it seems to be big
Yeah.
enough. I think but it's a good point that it's worth to try also on an entrepreneurial journey to tackle challenges that are big in some sense. And I just want to say this, that recently I was reading a book by Stephen Schwartzman that said what it takes, and one thing that he does say is that whatever you do, small or big, it will take your time and your focus and whatever, so you might as well just do something big instead of something small.
That's the real right there. So, did you get that? Did media? Did you get that? We're gonna cut that for socials. I love that. Amazing stuff. I think the thing, the way my brain went was 80%, and then I started looking around the room. I was like, well, the chairs come on on a boat, on a ship or whatever, and I was thinking, what else? So 80%. Once you start thinking about that, it's crazy. So amazing stuff. So in terms of that, you've had 5 years in the startup world, looking at complexity building. You've come back, you're into the PhD, you've started to learn about the maritime space. What was it that convinced you that there were opportunities or there were problems to solve?
Right, and I think this is that structurally, whether you move people by cars or goods by sea, in my mind, are quite similar. I came to find out that they're quite different nonetheless, but on a high level thinking, they're quite the same. And it's this type of problem that also motivate me for the self-driving car industry that keeps interesting me. And so this is what got me to it in the end. And I think these are still problems that are out there today. It's a system where you have multiple stakeholders that interact with each other. and just modeling those relations, figuring out how to behave in that system. So from a decision-making perspective, what could operators do better than they are doing today? Maritime is also one of the industries that have a measurable impact, say, on emissions, and if you are able to make the market more efficient, so to speak, you can also improve things on that front.
Amazing, amazing. I love it. Again, just broad strokes, perhaps naive questions, but perhaps it helps for others learning the maritime space. How does that piece work? You know, if you're a supplier in some part of the world and you're looking to sell goods in another part of the world, how does that process work at the minute of like booking could I book a space on a ship? Is it done at huge scale?
Right.
Are there brokers? What does that
exactly.
look like?
There is plenty of these say stakeholders in the market,
Okay.
and what it looks like, I think, depends a lot on what the specific good is. So that's another difficulty of this market. Is containers is very different from bulk, dry is very different from tankers to some extent, and each of these have their own specificities. But I think in general, you would have a broker somewhere that you might call that knows where a ship is or when a ship is available. You would have a deadline that the ship would need to meet in order to collect your cargo, and then they would ferry it to the port, and you'd say where it needs discharging, and then sort of that is how I think it, in a very simplified word, can be considered.
I needed simple, so you've read the room and give
I also
me
don't
one
know
in.
all the details. It's very intricate, but
no, it's cool, man. Because again, a bit like you, self-driving cars, super sexy. You know, AI, everything at the moment, amazing. Let's put a large language model on it, whatever.
Right.
But actually, to link it back to industry and real people and physical goods is for me super interesting. You've obviously touched on that you were doing your PhD. And at some point, you've obviously seen the industry. The industry's massive. You've got some ideas. You're thinking about it, and then obviously you met Signal.
Right.
So could you just explain a little bit more about, how that came about, and I guess how Signal fit into the industry as a whole, if you don't mind.
Right. So how it came about was during the PhD, we had this first meeting with Signal. And I think they were very supportive of what we were doing, very open to sort of engage with us, have people discuss with us problems, ideas, which I thought was very encouraging and important. And then at some point we were in the process of what I was doing during the PhD, and then the idea came up to say, look, what you're doing, we kind of think this could work, we believe in it. Could you imagine to embark on the journey of entrepreneur in residence? And then there was this point in time where I also had to make that decision, because I was kind of aware that doing this is a full-time job, and PhD is a full-time job, and maybe both are more than one full-time job. So one might suffer a bit, which was a compromise I was fine to live with. But then just being welcomed by Signal to actually do this and have an impact in the real world beyond what you can achieve in academia is maybe what got me on this journey in the first place. You were asking about Signal, and I think what I also really liked about Signal, and this is now of course my own view here, but is their values and the leadership that has really early on invested in digitalization and is very technology driven, the spirit, the people that are in the industry. I think in hindsight, I could not have imagined embarking on this journey with anyone else. And here it is, it was really helpful to have all of that guidance.
Amazing. I don't know what I was thinking here, but the question I wrote down was, what were your impressions of the company early on?
Right.
It's pretty good, yeah?
No, exactly. No, I think I might have got lost myself a second, but it is true that this is really what I believed in, and I still continue to believe in.
Amazing. And I guess in terms of that then, part of what's attracted you there is, and perhaps this is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you're building in that big existing industry, they had the existing domain knowledge.
Right.
It felt like the partnership rather than anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is what I think was crucial here, is this partnership. I don't think I could have done this by myself without Signal.
Yeah.
My background was very technology driven. I had literally no experience in shipping. And I think if you want to be successful, you need both in this case. And Signal was the right partner to do this. And that's why I mentioned the values of the company and the trust in the leadership, which I feel aligned with. And so this is a great place to build from within the inside.
Yeah, of course. Makes a lot of sense. It feels a bit like, sometimes when you talk about finding a co-founder, you have to have a mixture of skills, and someone has to be able to do sales and someone do tech or whatever, So it feels like it's that. Obviously, at the moment, I think on your LinkedIn, your title is actually Entrepreneur in Residence at Signal. So I'd love to talk about the Entrepreneur in Residence programme. We have spoke about them in the community a little bit before, and it's been more people join an Entrepreneur in Residence programme for 3 months. They go through this programme for 3 months. At the end of the 3 months, maybe sometimes there's a pitch, and you get to stay for another 3 months, and then you get kicked out if there isn't the traction or whatever. It's different, isn't it, at Signal? What does the Entrepreneur in Residence mean at
so
Signal?
So far, I have not yet been kicked out.
That's good to know. It's good to know.
It feels exactly. No, it does feel different from what you described. I think there is a bit more a long-term view here. There is not there. Of course, you need to deliver, but you also have people that are there with you from Signal to guide you and understand if something doesn't work out in that direction. That have the flexibility, the knowledge, and here the domain insight to guide you through that journey as an entrepreneur, where you hit sort of corners where you need to turn around, that you don't move on. And so in that sense, there has not been an aggressive push or so for you need to move very fast, otherwise you're out. It feels very organic, it feels very supportive. And also, you mentioned sort of the title being Entrepreneur in Residence. Yes, it is a job title. So in that sense, I am, what's the program like? I'm a full-time employee of Signal. So I'm not by myself in that sense, which is good too. So I get a bit of best of both worlds, the connection to the established company with a lot of domain knowledge. And on the other hand, a lot of freedom to actually work like an independent startup within. So we have the freedom where we need it, and we get the support where we need it. Yeah, and this is good to have, I must honestly say.
Amazing. And in terms of that, you've talked about being a founder within there, and there is that equity piece.
Yeah.
And like there's some sort of equity split or whatever, makes sense. So you've got obviously skin in the game. Signal have got skin in the game, supporting. Amazing stuff. So in terms of that, then, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, I think this is maybe I want to say this in a metaphorical way, is when you get up in the morning and it's raining outside and it's cold and it's dark, and you get on your bike and you start cycling and you have a lot of, say, headwind that blows your way. But then as you keep pedaling and rotating, at some point the weather changes, it gets better. Until it then rains again. But so my day-to-day is filled with a lot of, say, lows and highs, which I think is the engineering, or the entrepreneurial journey. And I think I would stop that here, unless you do really want to hear, me walking into the office and sitting down. And, exactly.
Mate, I'm sticking with the pedaling analogy, man. I'm pedaling all the time
so
as well.
It's a constant effort, that keeps going. But day to day, what I look forward to is meeting the team. Yeah. Meeting the team, engaging with human beings, and trying to solve a common problem.
Amazing stuff. We'll perhaps come on a little bit in terms of a little touch on what you're building. But in terms of that team then, again, I think the thing I'm keen to get out for everybody is obviously you're out there building. You've found your opportunity, you've found your idea, you're pedaling through the hard times, you've got the support, but you also have to make it happen. So what does your team look like at the moment? Are they all technologists?
I think to a large extent that is how I would describe them. We have a very quantitatively strong team with tech backgrounds, not shipping backgrounds. So the shipping expertise we get from Signal. So from a hiring perspective, I was also thinking, what is the thing that sets us apart from others? And here our core focus should be on the tech. And from the team, what we have a software stack. So what is quite important early on to me, what I learned lessons is to try to write clean code that you can sustain, you can iterate fast, and not shoot yourself in the foot every change you make, which is a challenge, of course. So I think that was a pillar that I was seeking to fill early on, besides then the people that do help on all the modeling and the decision making and whatever else needs doing on the technical front.
Amazing. Sounds fantastic. In terms of that, I think something all founders juggle is balance. I think obviously you have to keep that in mind, but it's also balancing relationship with a larger organisation and stuff like that. And I just wondered if you had any, how do you find that, finding the balance between being a founder in a larger organisation? Is there anything you would share specifically about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there truly is a balance. I just feel it's an organic role within, and I don't have many other founder experiences that I can really speak to, but I don't think there is really a lot of balance in any negative sense or so that needs to be made. So I'm not sure what to say on this.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And again, I think it speaks to being a founder.
Right.
There sometimes isn't balance, which is probably what it's all about. In terms of speed, again, I'm thinking specifically about being an entrepreneur in residence. I think a lot of what founders talk about is moving quickly, iterating, pivoting, and stuff like that. Right. Does that differ, do you think, in the entrepreneur in residence program? Does it help you? How do you approach speed?
Right. I think speed is important, but what I think is not important is just to write fast code. I think where the speed part comes in is having a means to quickly address important questions. And that can mean that you actually develop a feature for a much longer time than you could, because you build it in such a way that it allows you to be reused again in the future to address business questions in a fast way. And I think this quick hypothesis testing for business relevant things is where you want to be fast in, and not so much in speed and just being quick in developing some form of code. This works well, and it's also, again, very small teams. You need to do that because you need to keep your product, the idea, alive, and you need to show results. But this is sort of sometimes the fallacy that this may come at some point and bite you. And I think this is where, to speak to what you said about the no rush experience with entrepreneur in residence has helped. So there was this time at the start to build these things in that way.
Yeah, that makes lots of sense actually, and perhaps feeds into, I'm going to combine a couple of questions into one actually, just specifically to close out, I think, the entrepreneur in residence piece. Is there anything that has surprised you about the entrepreneur in residence program? And then also, like, if anyone is considering an entrepreneur in residence path, have you got any tips?
Right. I think that in terms of surprises, so far, not really. It was fairly well laid out. No, but I think this is also important that it was fairly well laid out from the start. It was quite clear, the structure, how it would work was well explained, well documented. So I think there were no surprises. I knew what I was getting into. And then in terms of recommendations, I think if you do engage with a bigger company, I think you want to make sure that you align with their values, with their business, with their leadership, and understand how that company creates value and how you fit into that piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. So it's basically, it's very much treating them as an investor and doing your due diligence,
right.
I guess, because once you go down that path, it'd be very hard to undo it.
Right, and I think also in terms of values is treat them as a friend, someone, as you said, co-founder, friend you really align with, you believe in the values. And that's, I think, important, because there will be the hard times, but at least if you share those values, you can push through it together and not have already in your core values key differentiating factors.
Super interesting. I know the same point came up when we had the coaches in, and there were some questions in the audience about working with co-founders, and I think in the past perhaps stories that hadn't worked and stuff like that. So you're going in with your eyes open, aligning on values, and then that ultimately has helped you, build better, essentially. Amazing. In terms of what you're building, I don't know how much we can talk about.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. At a high level, what is it you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, I'd like to give this with a small example or something that I came across recently that I think helps to set the stage for what we're building. And that was the annual review on maritime transport that is being released by the United Nations. And it said something along the lines that maritime transport is facing daunting challenges. Ports congestion is now more the norm. There used to be vessels that crossed through the Red Sea, now having to sail for weeks longer around the Cape of Good Hope. Freight rates being very volatile and causing trouble to people, to stakeholders. And I think this is exactly where we come in. We try to bring clarity to this picture. These are all risk scenarios, risk factors to some of these companies, and we provide a way to quantify these risks and lead to better risk management.
Mate, perfect. And in terms of that, if you don't mind, why, again, perhaps a naive question, but why is that so important?
Right. I think it is so important because it's high stakes industry, a lot of capital involved. And then for all the reasons as mentioned before, with 80% of the world trade, it is just fundamentally important. And within such a high stakes environment, you want to know what your risks are. You want to find ways to mitigate it. You want to be aware of the what ifs of things that could go wrong, how it impacts you, your business. Right.
Makes so much sense.
So
if I ask, I don't think I'm going to ask anything that you can't answer, but if I do ask anything you can't answer, just
please.
Politely let us know. But in terms of that then, it sounds like a massive problem. I know we talked ahead of this, we've planned this, you wouldn't believe it, would you, but we have planned this. But we talked about like a digital twin. So could you perhaps, is it okay to share a bit how you approach modelling this risk, basically?
Yeah, I think you could all think of it like a flight simulator, as an analogy, which is sort of a system that models key dynamics of an airplane, how it flies, how, if you steer it, what happens, what are the maneuvers to a plane. And I think in terms of a digital twin for the shipping industry, you could think of it in the same way, where we try to identify and model key interactions between stakeholders and system dynamics that then allow us to understand what happens if we move the joystick, say, of the plane in one direction or another, and get this out in a very quantitative approach. I think that is one of the things that this system allows you to.
Amazing. So it sounds incredibly complicated, but fantastic. I guess in terms of building the early versions, we've talked a little bit about obviously building, iterating, building well, but moving quickly. What have been your, how long have you been working on this, and what have been your early lessons, I guess?
Right. So I think we've been working on this for a good year-ish, maybe a bit more if you consider the PhD version 2. And I think the early versions worked quite promising with simple models. But then as you try to break into from the research kind of environment into the commercially viable one, the specifications change. They become a bit more complicated, a bit more complex. And sort of that is one of the lessons maybe from the early versions, that you can get very far in a research context with some simple models, but there will really be where you need to level up some things as you move into the commercial world.
Amazing. Not a question on my list, I'm going off piece now, but have there been any again, this is just me being an optimist, but have you made a like tiny little change that's just kind of exploded it in one direction? Like as you're approaching this, has there been any like crazy moments like that where things have shocked you?
Not really.
This will be why you were doing the PhD and I wasn't.
No. But I think this could also be worrying, right? Because you haven't noticed yet.
Yeah.
But I think what has sort of shocked me to some extent is how quick some of the dynamics are in the market, how fast they move, how sometimes little quantitative leading indicators you may get out, and that these things will be harder to model, and you need to understand how to cut through that complexity to still be able to generate some value.
Yeah, makes sense. And I guess at some level you're also dealing with human psychology.
Right,
in
a
terms
lot,
of
I think, to some extent,
supply
from
and
what I hear.
demand.
Right.
Wow, man, very, very complicated model. I guess at a high level then, like, what does success, look like? Are you starting to get some of those successes? What does that look like at the minute, and perhaps what are you aiming for it to look like in a year or two's time?
Right. I think success to me really would be very simple, and that would be that we can help people, stakeholders of this system, improve their decision-making processes and risk management processes. This is really very high level, and this will be something that I would say will be what I would be aiming for now and later. There's not much that I will, change on the high level.
Amazing. I'm keen to dig into like building in a traditional industry, because it is something that's slightly different. But I just wondered if there's anyone else in the room that either works in a traditional industry or is considering building in a traditional industry. Or just a quick show of hands. There's a few. We've got insurance at the back with Alessandro. I know you're doing it. Amazing. So there's a few of us. So yeah, let's see where we go with this. As I say, I've been surprised by what I've learned about maritime. I just wondered, like, is there anything? What has surprised you about, I guess, maritime, but also, widening it out to perhaps people that are working in insurance or other traditional industries? What has surprised you about, building in these industries? And I guess just weaving into that, like, how important is credibility to be able to be successful?
Right. I think I will flip the question around and start
Go for it.
I think importance, credibility is very important. And I think in any industry, whether you are in pharmaceuticals, self-driving cars or so that it will be on you to figure out how you can prove that credibility. And this might be done by speaking to your potential customers, understand what are their needs, how can you demonstrate that you're actually providing value to them, and then honor the relationship, understand how the rules of the game in that industry works, and work with integrity with your customers to try and understand how you can gain that credibility, and then work towards gaining that. And then the first bit about surprises, I think what surprised me was how different commodities were in terms of the market dynamics, how many stakeholders there are. It's an industry that has been around for many years, decades, centuries even, and there have been plenty of players around that found their niches that are important somehow to the system, and first you're wondering, why do we need them, etc. But it is all like a geared system to some extent, and that really surprised me, since this makes the system also quite complicated. There's a lot of interfaces between different stakeholders that need to work together, and I think getting an understanding of that is, in this case, was fundamental, and it surprised me.
Amazing. Yeah, makes so much sense.
Very simple self-driving car view where you have a passenger who wants to go from A to B and you give a car.
Self-driving cars, they are simple. I reckon they're very simple.
No, they're not.
I think I'd love to talk about, again, it's very good Alessandro is with us today. So Alessandro explained the Lloyd's of London market to me, insurance, a few years back. And again, very naive. It was eye-opening for me. And obviously there's incumbents, things are done for a certain way, it's worked for a long, long time. And I think the thing that I'm keen to just touch on is like, I guess when you deal with super small scale ups, it's all disruption. And I guess if you're in a big established industry, if you're running around saying we're disrupting, it's probably not the message you want, but you want to innovate, you want to improve.
Right.
And I just wondered how you'd found that, how you find that balance of improving and innovating without scaring the crap out of everyone.
Right. No, I think that is goes back to having this in mind that you're trying to help someone solve business problems. I don't think, in our case, we're out here to run around and shout that we are innovating in a way, just for the sake of it, to some extent, even though we are trying to, of course, by improving processes and adopting more modern technologies to solve open questions. So I think in terms of this innovation disruption. What's the word? I think I could.
Well, it's a dirty word.
But I don't have it so often in my language. But so I think there is really just keep in mind. You can call it what you want, but keep in mind that you are there to help improve, be constructive, rather than destructive. Sometimes innovation happens not because it's any bad intentions or it's meant to be in a negative sense, but it just happens that some companies, I think, sometimes need to follow a specific route to fulfill customer needs, etc. Meanwhile, and it's being quite logical to do that, meanwhile overlooking that there are some other areas that don't seem to be paying so well right now, where they are losing out. And so then that comes later to get off the market from them that they had.
Makes a lot of sense. So I guess part of it is communication. As well in terms of what you're doing. Right. And I guess, again, I might be reading this wrong, but it's probably a benefit with Signal. So I feel like a lot at the moment, you see cycles with the big AI companies that release all this news about disruption, and it's all linked to the next funding round. So they're putting news cycles out there about how it's going to impact industries and a massive change and all this type of stuff. But I guess being in the Entrepreneurial in Residence program, that takes, I guess, the stress off for you to be, we need to raise a Series B, we need to cause some disruption in that space? Or
not necessarily.
No.
I think it gives you a bit of peace of mind at the start because of that longer commitment and relationship that you're building.
Yep.
But I think you need to be aware that there will still be that point in time where you'll get to that situation where you need to have proven that something works, maybe convince other people to invest.
Amazing.
So I don't think it takes that away in any means. But you have someone in there that has done that in the past a number of times to support you through that process.
Amazing.
Especially for me, if you're new to it, I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. And that's something specifically you've felt that influence, that they've allowed you to solve challenges that perhaps you wouldn't have been able to.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Amazing. Man, I'm putting you on the spot. I've put here, are there examples? So it's sometimes tough when someone's have you got, that's a great point. You've got any examples?
No. One is very simple, which is the access to the deep market knowledge, which we wouldn't have gotten without Signal. Then there is, of course, the data from Signal that we have access to, which is really what I enjoy so much. Is these are the decisions that the leadership of Signal have taken in the past that allow us, that have enabled us to build on top of that. And again, without them, their partnership, I don't think we could have built what we're building today.
Amazing. Love it. I think maybe we've got like 10, 15 minutes that we'll keep going. As I say, maybe we'll take a few questions then. I'll read the room. We'll see what's happening, but just be thinking. Part 7. We've done well here, haven't we? We've got to part 7. Who'd have thought it? Lessons in talent, leadership and scaling. So I love talking to founders, talking about how they manage their companies, how they manage their teams, all that type of stuff. And I guess my first question on that stage is that you've worked in early stage companies, you've worked in later stage companies, you've worked in large scale environments, you've worked in complex situations. What do you think the difference is that you've noticed between those kind of early stage versus the large scale environments that you've worked in?
So I think in both cases you still need skill for sort of the problem you're solving.
Yep.
But in the early stage environments, this is sort of a self-managing group of people while they're still small. So you have typically in the tech industry, more technology-driven people that are together with less of product management maybe at first. And then as the company grows, you would hire product managers to help you with that. Yeah. And other less technical people maybe to help just organizing the crowd of you. Yeah. And I think that is one of the key differences that I have noticed, and I think we already spoke about that at the start, so I don't want to go too long into this.
Yeah, makes sense, man, makes sense. I think the other thing that's very clear across your whole career today, you are working in very complex technical domains. So I guess I would like to just perhaps learn from you about how you think about hiring into those teams. You know, I'm thinking perhaps whether there's founders in the room, future founders, or people watching on YouTube. If you're in this quite complex environment, it's probably quite hard to hire a team. How do you approach hiring?
I think that said, hiring is never easy, regardless of how complex the setting might be. Yeah. But what is important when you start out is maybe to be aware of your skill set, what you're trying to build, and what complements that skill set. Meanwhile, not maybe on the first 2 hires hiring completely different people that cannot communicate because they don't understand each other, but you do want to build some sort of complementarity in the team. And so it's important to understand what are the pillars that you think are important for success. For us, I mentioned that there is this software platform, so software engineering was quite an important one for me, just like the tech is. And so then you would try to fill roles according to that. And in the hiring process, I think you will get used to reading CVs and you will improve. And also this is a learning process, which I have been very grateful to get pretty good support from Signal actually, which is another reason why I thought that the Entrepreneur in Residence was actually really valuable, because you get access to their talent pools, their talent partners that help you find the people that you need.
Yeah, makes so much sense, I didn't even mention it at the beginning, but just like add another string to your bow. But when you've been studying, you have also been doing a bit of teaching on the side, as you do. And I just wondered if any of that experience has shaped perhaps how you lead. Was there anything you think was there a reason you did that, and do you think you're reaping the benefit of that now? Or?
Perhaps. I don't know, I'm sure it has shaped me. I did enjoy teaching, and one of the realizations I had early on is that in order to teach something, you need to understand what you're teaching. So it's a good opportunity for yourself to learn something in detail and then go out in front of the students that are very critical, try to understand, and then try to bring the ideas to them. And what I have seen work well for myself, that I've also seen work well in classes, is when people started with the intuition, not just straight with the formulas. What's the idea behind this from an intuitive perspective, very high level, and then work your way down into the details more and more. Yeah. And so then you lose, I thought, people less, and the teaching was something I must say I enjoyed during the times.
Amazing. Sometimes it's good to do stuff just because you enjoy it as well, isn't it?
Right.
It's nice. Amazing. So I think I've got 4 or 5 questions I think left, and we'll draw things to a close at that point. And I think at this point I'm perhaps going to talk about being a founder in general.
Right.
And I think the thing that I've taken from the conversation so far and from talking with you ahead of today is that you have taken a number of calculated risks. And I just wondered, what, if anything, have you kind of learned over that journey of taking calculated risks? It feels like obviously a risk to jump on the plane to Singapore and spend 5 years out there, 50 to 1,200 people. Feels like another calculated risk to go back to a PhD. Feels like another calculated risk to kind of step into Signal.
Right.
So what is it in you, or what have you learned in that? Is there any advice that you would give to people out there?
I think there is, to one extent, is that you learn from each of these experiences. Whenever you put yourself out of your comfort zone, this is where you progress. And I think this is just to say, on the Singapore experience, at the end when we were a big company, I also had the impression we were a pretty good team, everything was running solidly, but did we still learn as much? And so I think it's also a risk sometimes to not evolve and not maybe throw yourself in the cold water, go back to uni, learn and see where that can get you. So it's when speaking about calculated risks, yes, maybe sometimes if you're at a different stage of your life, you may not as quickly decide as I was able to do. But in general, I think whatever you do has its risks, and you need to decide which risks you want to take, and then go with it.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. It's like it's being mindful of what you're going to put your energy into,
right.
Essentially, isn't it? Makes sense.
And then the life experience, of course, which is maybe also a factor for me.
It helps.
Was interesting as experiences.
Yeah, amazing. There may or may not be some people in the room thinking about starting something on their own, and I just wondered if there was anything that you would tell someone who was thinking about starting a venture.
So I think I would say that you should think right to left. So start from where you want to go and work your way back, as is common in many optimization and decision-making techniques. And not necessarily say, I've worked on this and now let me find the nail I can throw my hammer at, in a way. But start with a problem, a customer understanding, since you need to keep in mind that a necessary and sufficient condition to have a business going is that you have a paying customer. So don't lose that out of sight and work your way backwards. Then another thing I would say is that what we touched on the iterating fast. So invest in maintaining a good iteration speed for your ideas. And then in the end, it will anyways, everything will turn out different than you planned. So, take one step at a time and don't give in. I mean, there's just a journey you need to walk and put one foot ahead of the other.
Yeah, and I like that. And I also like the point there about iterating on the ideas. So you're being mindful of the opportunities out there. You've recorded your ideas in some way, and then you want some sort of cadence of testing, going, prioritizing, etc. Yeah.
That the chances that you get it right the first time, if you do, really good for
Amazing.
you.
Yeah.
But chances are that it's not that way, and you need to evolve your product, your ideas over time. And it will also just add to the experience of the team. If you have something where it's a pain for everyone just to change something and try out the new idea, it kills the momentum.
Makes sense. And I also love the point that you are being very mindful of the commercial aspect from the get-go. You are thinking about that end point of, it would be nice to make some money, it would be profitable, So that I think is sometimes from some of the founders that we meet, or potential founders, they're so focused on the idea and the passion to want to solve a problem, they forget about that last bit on the end.
You do need both.
Yeah. Yes.
And then also be aware that as you hire people, they also dedicate their time to do this with you. So there's also an aspect of perhaps responsibility of trying to lead them onto something that is sensible.
Makes sense. Is there anything you wish you'd known before beginning?
Yeah,
Where do we
everything
start?
I know today at least. I think that there is, of course, a big wish list there, but this journey is just a process, an iterative thing, and in hindsight, some things would have been clear maybe, but so you can't really know at the time. So
just embrace it. Eh?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. And I think last question from me. Being a founder, building anything is difficult. What keeps you motivated? How do you approach it? Is there anything you would share around motivation for people that are out there in the trenches?
Yeah, for me it's the tech that we're building and the team. So the problems that we are solving motivate me. They keep me going. I'm aware that it's hard, but also aware that you just have to move forward.
Yeah.
And sometimes just by itself being someone that doesn't give in easily helps as a person, because there will be challenging spots, and you just need to sit in there, hang in there, and keep going.
Keep pedaling.
Right, keep pedaling.
Keep pedaling, man. Keep pedaling. I think the thing I absolutely love, I've loved the conversation, but the thing that you've touched on a number of times there is bringing it back to other people, and you being mindful of your team and the journey you're all on together and what you're doing, which is, I think, very unique, actually. I speak to a lot of founders, and it doesn't always come across in that way. So that's been absolutely amazing. So with that, could I please have a round of applause for Marc? Well done, sir. Well done, man. That was fantastic. That was fantastic. We don't always do questions. In fact, last couple we haven't done any questions. But is there any questions for Marc? Oh, there's hands. You were slightly quick. I'll come back to you straight away. So.
I was going to ask about competition. Like, you sort of entered into Signal. Was there any pressure from other parts of the business for you to do
It's
things?
a very good question.
And the other part of that is also, how much do you have to keep an eye on the, excuse the sailing terminology, an eye on the horizon for other people trying to do their stuff?
Why didn't I use that? Like, what? I've got all these notes and I didn't use horizon. Jeez.
No,
Sorry,
this is a very good question, actually, and I think this was maybe at the start, as all this idea came about. There was thoughts, I guess, from the Signal side. How can this fit into what we're doing? How is it relevant? How is it maybe different from what we're doing? So that from the start there was not really a situation where there was a lot of this internal competition with respect to internal teams, if I got that part right of the question. And then how much do you need to be on the lookout for other people? Yeah, you have to. And now the other thing is, being aware of that there are other people doesn't necessarily change your journey. So the thing you can do at this point is put your energy into what you're doing, be aware of the environment, but keep moving your thing forward too, and then not be scared or so if someone else shows up doing something too.
Fantastic.
Does
Great
it
question,
answer
great
your question?
I'll come back to you because what was your question? Sorry.
Hi. I'm also working in these traditional
Industries.
like telco, oil and gas, ports, and all this. They're enterprise clients, right? So it's quite difficult to get into them. I'm wondering how you manage that.
Right.
Super quickly, I'm going to repeat this question back for the purpose of YouTube. So I'm mic'd up and I was getting told off and not being able to hear it. So the question was, I hope I do this justice, but if you're building in traditional, highly enterprise-led industries, like how do you get into them basically?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Thank you for that. I think it is, in my case, and in maybe other cases too, you need to be lucky sometimes. And I think for me, the circumstances were just good with the people that I worked with that could make this introduction, bring up this idea, and also at the same time find an open partner on the other end so that things worked out. And this is not necessarily easy, it's not given, so sometimes you need a bit of luck.
Go-to-market for your investors, though, isn't it?
Say again?
It's quite a tough go-to-market for your investors to swallow, luck.
Right, okay, yes, perhaps. But it doesn't mean that what you're building has no commercial value just because you found the right people at the good point in time.
It feels like as well, based on what you've explained, that's a big part of the Signal connection, and that by building that relationship, it perhaps opens some doors into established markets.
And this is actually one thing that I think maybe is, I don't want to put words in the mouth of any investors, but that they would appreciate is the customer network of Signal, the understanding of Signal, of the market, of their customers. So instead of it being a negative thing, maybe it's more a positive ground to grow from.
I think Signal are looking to invest, man. So if you've got an idea, this man right in the middle is who you need to talk to. So amazing. There was another question over here, please.
First of all, thank you.
Thank you.
And I found one bit I found actually really inspiring. I wanted to say before going to the question is how you said going back to uni, being around a bunch of young people, being like, have they taken a step back, but being willing to learn in that environment too, and then how it's taken to you where you are now. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
My question is kind of like, how do you figure out who has the money and what they're willing to spend it on in these sort of big enterprise sort of companies, because like you have to go through so many processes, figuring out who the decisions makers are, and then as a founder, how do you sort of keep that there, understand that, and sort of keep that be there as well?
Again, for the purpose of YouTube, I'll repeat that back. How do you find the money?
Yeah. I mean, it's right there, Dave. No, I take it, may I ask if this was meant from sort of customers, as future customers for your business, or investors to start building?
Customers.
Right,
Yeah,
okay. So from the future customers' perspective, I don't have a good answer yet, except for two things. That this is a trial and error process. You have ideas, customer have ideas. You need to go with an open ear and try to listen to them. And the other is that through the knowledge of Signal, in our case, we already have a head start by people speaking to customers that have a feeling about what could be useful for customers, and this influences our decisions, sort of all together. So in our instance, this comes well together, I would say.
Makes a lot of sense.
Does it answer the question?
yeah, no, it does.
Thank you.
I feel like you bid on an auction there. It was just a real like, come on, what was the question?
Yeah, I think sort of Dave picked up on it. That you have a very interesting perspective that balances the commercial with the innovation with actually the people you're working with, and it sounds like that suits the environment that an entrepreneur in residence kind of set up you've got. If that didn't sort of come to you, do you see yourself being a founder in a different setup, or what do you see your path looking like in that case?
I've got to do it again for YouTube.
Yeah, please.
You have a lovely balance of commercial and innovation on the Entrepreneur in Residence programme, but if you weren't doing that, would you see yourself still being a founder?
Right. I love this question. It's very difficult, I find, to answer for some reason, because I think on that front, I would not have embarked on the Entrepreneur in Residence journey if I hadn't believed in it myself. And so I would not want to be, given how difficult it is, how painful of an experience it is for people that know, that have done this in the past, to just be a founder for the sake of being one, in that sense. Do I personally maybe like small dynamic teams, maybe over more corporate structures? Perhaps. But I think it would need to be something that you believe in, and only then, in that given moment, if the time feels right, I will go for it again.
A calculated risk. I love it. Great question. Thank you. Dane, please tell them about your Geo product, man. This would fit so well with shipping. Grab him at the bar afterwards. So Dane is also building in the Geo space. So. But sorry, what was your question?
I hope you can answer this. When you eventually leave Signal and potentially take your venture with you, how will the ownership or the equity be split among you and your co-founders in Signal? Are they going to have a chunk that they maintain ownership of?
For YouTube, thank you.
Of course.
When or if you leave Signal, how will that look, basically, in terms of equity, ownership, all that type of stuff? Dane is dropping bombs.
No, very good question.
Tell me, how is it going to work?
So there is, I'm going to answer it in two ways. One is just plain and simple, that yes, everybody gets their share. And the other is that, just to say, Signal is not imposing any sort of restrictions on who you can sell to competitors or so. So they're very open. Like, I think this is like a, like an investment into some company that they want to succeed and believe in a fair market, an efficient market, and that competition drives innovation in a way. So there are no such limitations, if the question was somewhat directed to that part. And then, yes, how it's structured is all set out, laid out, and we all agreed to that.
I also love how you're not building for an exit. Again, I speak to a lot of founders and they're literally just starting something and they're going, oh, 2 years from now, this is my exit. And I'm like, it's cool, like people do it, like, it works, but like if you're building something that you care about, then I feel like the longer term wins out for me anyway. So I think that was the last question. So I will draw things to a close. I'm going to ask for one more round of applause. Thank you. That was amazing. Amazing.